Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/Entitled Parents. In today's episode, entitled mother lets her kid steal my blind cane. Dad calls the cops on me for being scared of wasps. My father sexualizes every tiniest thing about me and it disgusts me. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. Entitled mother lets her kid steal my blind cane. So a bit of backstory, I am a 28-year-old woman who just recently went fully blind. When I was a teenager, I volunteered with my local youth group to help rebuild Mississippi after Hurricane Katrina, and while down there I picked up a fungal parasite called histoplasmosis that over a decade migrated to my eyes and slowly caused blindness. I've been totally blind for about a year now, so I'm pretty new to it, but I digress. When I first went blind, I barely left the house and was afraid to go in public. I felt like everyone was staring at me, and in all honesty, I barely knew what I was doing. The transition had been difficult and I didn't have any support group to teach me. One day my husband asks if I can take an Uber down to the bank and deposit a rent check, and I reluctantly agree. While out, he messages again and reminds me that we're out of a few crucial groceries. There was a Walmart grocery literally across the street from the bank, so I figure everything in life is an experience and I'll have to learn how to shop alone eventually, so why not? Everything was fine at first and I was only grabbing a few things, so I didn't need a cart. I was using my cane and what little echolocation skills I had at the time to get around, but was still bumping into things as we blind tend to do sometimes. My cane suddenly hit something a bit softer and I figure maybe I had whacked someone's leg and apologize. Cue entitled kid, EK, and entitled mother, EM. Me, shoot, I'm sorry. EM, hey. You just hit my son. Me, I'm so sorry, ma'am, I didn't see him there. EM begins yelling, how could you not see him, he's clearly right here. Now I'm fully blind, but I don't wear sunglasses. Mostly because I can't afford a good UV blocking pair, but also I'm not ever looking for pity or to play the part of a generic blind person. I just want to be treated like a normal person, but I do understand her confusion as blindness is a spectrum, so I try to calmly explain. Me, ma'am, I'm blind, I can't see anything, let alone your son. That's why I have to use the cane, so I can get around without. She cuts me off, if you're blind, why aren't you wearing big sunglasses? Now, as a blind person I get a lot of stupid questions, but I understand a lot of them are just people who don't know better, so I try to happily answer as many as I can. Me, those are really expensive, around $200 for a good pair, and I really don't need any inside. EM, you're not blind, you're faking it. Here is where my blood starts to boil. I can't think of any reason someone would want to pretend to be blind, it's an actual hell, and nothing pisses me off more than when someone calls me a liar when I'm not. Just as I'm about to respond, I feel a tug, and before I blink I realize this little demon spawn has snatched my $100 cane from my hands. For those of you who don't understand, that's like if you're shopping and suddenly the power goes out and you can't see a single light. Without my cane, I can barely move at all without crashing into anything. My voice gets shaky as I begin to panic, please give that back. I really do need it. EM, no you don't, you liar. My son deserves to play with this more than you. I hear her shuffle away and my expensive cane cracking into metal displays and such as they leave. I start crying and waving my arms in front of me to grab onto something, anything, and end up crashing and falling into a center aisle display, making a loud scene. Without fail I somewhat curl into a ball and cry. I'm alone in public, in the dark, and I had no idea what to do. Suddenly I feel a hand on my shoulder and a man's voice, we'll call him AG for awesome guy, asks if I'm okay and to stay right here. I do, but begin to at least sit up and listen. This man must have been tall and built like a tank because his footsteps sounded like a giant and I felt a suction of wind when he took off. Maybe about 30 or 40 feet away I hear this loud bellowing like an angry lion and a loud crash, then before I know it the man is back and helping me to my feet. He takes my hand and puts my cane into my palm and helps me pick up the items I dropped when I fell into the display. Me wiping tears from my cheeks. Thank you so much, I didn't know how to handle that. AG, don't worry about it, some people are just monsters. This guy restored my faith in humanity and even helped me finish shopping and helped me out of the store. As we're leaving, I can hear the familiar screeching of EM, something about AG grabbing the cane and pulling hard, flinging her little devil child into a shopping cart. I don't know if she was exaggerating or not, but it would explain the crash I heard. It's easy to feel alone in a world without sight, but even through the sheer terror of being stripped of my cane, at least I know now that there are people willing to stand up for me when I need it. Edit. Because of the sheer overwhelming amount of people asking if you're blind, how are you typing, they'll first answer with my fingers, and secondly I'm using a screen reader called Narrator that reads the screen. Wherever my cursor or finger is over the screen, it reads. When I type a letter, it reads. Guys, just, Google it or something? OMG. I hope you don't let her deter you from exploring your new world and gaining confidence. Do you have a blind academy near you? They usually have classes for adults who are newly blind. Try calling the CNIB if you are in Canada or your country's equivalent of National Blind Association. I do have a lighthouse for the blind near me, but I had to get a diagnosis first, which I got, and then boom, pandemic, don't leave your house. I can't believe someone would do that. I'm very glad that man helped you. The bystander effect can be really awful sometimes, but as you said, I'm glad there are good people left in this world. I hope you're doing okay and will soon be able to improve your experiences in public once we are allowed outside again. Thank you, you're sweet. Honestly, I would have personally jumped in to help someone in a heartbeat, and it's nice to know that others would too. Just hearing all these comments assures me that it can and does get better. Sending you digital hugs, because you are resilient and an inspiration of courage for having shared your story. If her brat wanted to play with a blind cane, he should have his eyes taped shut and then be yelled at every time he deliberately hits a person, because he is, of course, just pretending to be blind. I'm feeling vindictive tonight. This woman knowingly and willingly allowed her kid to not only steal from a blind person, but to steal one of the most important things that a blind person could have to still make it around in this world. I guarantee you she even encouraged it. People like that deserve to be publicly shamed in a town square. Thank God for that awesome dude though, for sure. Side note, I hope this doesn't sound rude, but how do you read comments? I'm guessing you have a text-to-speech program of some sort? Regardless, technology can be an amazing thing. I wonder if she'd let her kid push someone out of a wheelchair because she decided they could just walk. Karen needs a prison sentence and to be stuck on an island with nothing except the clothes she has on. Dad calls the cops on me for being scared of wasps. For context, this story actually happened a couple of years ago. I, 22F, have since moved out and am happily living with my partner, 20F. So, as the title obviously states, I have a phobia of wasps. Now, this isn't just an ick or a small fear. This is a full-blown, panic-inducing phobia, and I've had it for as long as I can remember. Anytime I see a wasp, no matter how far away from me it is, I will do absolutely anything I can to get as far away from it as possible. If one flies near me or is in my immediate vicinity, I will start to shake, cry, hyperventilate, and if it gets any closer, I will start screaming and flailing much like a child. It's incredibly embarrassing and humiliating, especially out in public. I've tried my best to control it, but nothing so far has helped. It might be worth mentioning I'm also autistic, so I struggle deeply with emotional regulation due to my disability. My wasp phobia has always been a huge nuisance, especially to the people around me. And trust me, my family made sure I knew about it. As a young child, I was constantly reminded of how I ruined family outings, how my family could never take me outside, I would be spanked for having my panic attacks, etc. On top of that, my dad and his brother loved to torment me about it when I was little. They would jab me in the head and make buzzing noises to startle me. They would tell me there were nests/wasps nearby to make me scream and cry, and then when I got to the point of crying they would make fun of me for being such a crybaby. So, needless to say, my wasp phobia isn't necessarily all about wasps. There's some PTSD attached to it as well. Enough with the sad backstory, though, and on to the main event. A couple of years ago, I was almost 21 at the time. My mom and I had just returned from the grocery store. We pulled into the driveway, and beside the driveway in front of my parents' house stands a big oak tree. Wasps do tend to hang around by that tree, of course, for the wood. At that point I had gotten myself to ignore them, as long as they didn't bother me. This time, however, there were a whole bunch of them swooping and buzzing around the car. My mom asked me to get out to help her with the groceries, and I asked her to go ahead and start, and I'd join her once I calmed down from my nerves about the wasps. My mom chose to stay in the car with me to help me calm down. I cannot stress this enough, my mom was not trapped in the car with me. She was only trying to help and could have removed herself from the situation at any time. My dad was in the front yard, and noticed that I wasn't getting out. He came up to the door and tried to open it. Of course, I screamed and held it shut, considering there were wasps flying directly by the door. My mom told him to go away, she could handle it. She was trying to calm me down, and all he was doing was making me more upset. Now my panic was beginning to turn into an autism meltdown. I felt trapped, and like I couldn't escape. My dad came back after a few minutes, and tried once again to open the door. I freaked out again and started crying, begging him to leave me alone. He obliges, and goes away. A few moments later, I finally begin to calm down and go to get out of the car so I can make a beeline, pun absolutely intended, for the garage. Keep in mind, there's still very much a large sum of wasps zipping back and forth around the car. Right as I'm about to open the door, my dad emerges with his phone up to his ear. He comes up to the door and pounds on the window, which startles me into not wanting to open it again. He forces the door open and informs me, as I'm starting to fall back into my meltdown, that he's calling the police to have me forcibly removed from the car. This, of course, terrifies me enough to immediately get me out of the car. I burst into tears, begging him to hang up as I jump out of the car and run into the house, wasps obviously forgotten. I was beyond embarrassed and humiliated. I felt like a child. My mom was livid, and I could hear her yelling at him as I ran in. I locked myself in the bathroom, feeling like I was going to vomit. I allowed myself to cry and have my meltdown for a few minutes, and then tried to calm down. My dad knocked on the door and told me it was my fault he called the police, and that I deserved what he had tried to do, and that I was going to be the one explaining to the police that I was too wimpy towards a few wasps to get out of the car if he'd ended up calling them. I didn't respond. In fact, I didn't respond to him at all, for 2 days. After a couple of days of the silent treatment, he told me that if I wanted to treat him so badly for being a loving and caring father, then I wasn't allowed to have privileges in the house anymore, and he was taking my car away. Essentially trying to lock me down like a child. Given the fact that this was a tactic he'd been using my whole life, I gave in to him, and things went back to normal, if you can even call it that. As I said before, I have since moved out and I am far away from that situation. I still can't believe anybody in their right mind would call the police on an autistic person who was having a moment of distress, especially considering I wasn't hurting myself or anybody else. My mom wasn't trapped in there with me either like my dad tried to claim. She had free will to leave the car at any time. Very glad to now be living with my girlfriend, who is very patient and kind with me about my phobia. It's a work in progress, and the police incident set me back drastically, but I'm slowly getting better, smiley face. Long story short, my dad was so desperate for a power trip that he came down on me with an iron fist about a situation that he wasn't involved in or asked to become involved in. I think he'd find that unless the cop that arrived was his best mate, unfortunately not an uncommon occurrence with this type of person though, he'd have been the one with some explaining to do. Cops don't usually take kindly to being called out to deal with wasps and terrified teenagers when they've got murderers and crack dealers to sort out. Anyway, really sorry this happened to you. This Glad they didn't show up, for Opie's sake, cause I'm sure it would have escalated and made things worse for them, but I really wish the dad had explained to the responding officer why he called. I'd have taken joy in the cop tearing into him about proper use of 911, filing a false report, and bullying his child like an asshole. Bonus if he got community service removing wasp nests around the area, got stung like crazy and ended up with his own phobia. Awesome. That's horrible. I have a phobia of wasps as well. Admittedly I'm not as bad, but wasps can literally kill me, so I kinda force-trained myself to be still. I make a lot of noise though. My whole family is well aware of this and have got stung to get wasps away from me. What a rubbish excuse of a father. His brother stinks, too, for helping to torture child you. I am also terrified of wasps. My father sexualizes every tiniest thing about me and it disgusts me. I'm 20F, currently living with my abusive parents. I just came here for my birthday, which by the way they didn't even wish me. It was a huge mistake, but I'm planning on leaving soon, hopefully. I just wanted to ask if it's normal for a 60Y/O man to control and sexualize her daughter so much? Ever since I was a kid, my dad has always been extremely controlling about my clothes. He was the main reason I wanted to study abroad so that I can be myself. He doesn't even let me wear a full sleeve tee that shows a little bit of neck on a summer day, or a top that hugs my body a little and makes really odd comments like, "Are you not going to cover that up? People will make fun of you for wearing that. I feel embarrassed around you dressing like this. Dress like a woman. Dress decently. And it's just sweatpants and a tee." And before you may think of reasonings. He is not religious, neither is he protective. He's very controlling in other aspects as well. And he tells me I can dress however I want to, still extremely modest, outside of my country, but when I'm here I have to dress accordingly. Makes me think if I can ever be myself in my own home? It's not the controlling bit that bothers me the most, it's him over-sexualizing my every moment. He has always been this way. Even my brother is disturbed by this creepy behavior and told him to back off multiple times, but he never listens. I truly want him to be embarrassed the way he embarrasses me every day. How do I tell him to get off once and for all? I truly want him to stop doing this so that I can see him as a father, not a perv. It's not about the clothes or how you look in them. It's a pure power play. And once you play their game, it's over. Wear whatever you want and loudly, never give an inch, because he will try to shame and blame you back to under his control. I know you're young and the common decent thing is to fight to have your parents in your life, but honestly, do you want to? Do you really want to confront him or hide who you are for the small chance he will be decent? You don't have to decide straight away, but there are ways to survive and thrive without family. How much shit do you really want to live with? I would tell you to run and make up your own identity outside of what they think, but I'm just a stranger, so take it all with a grain of salt. Hope you well and happy birthday. You are an adult, tell him to mind his own business and let you live your life. Unless you are worried he's going to throw you out on the street, just stop responding to his comments and ignore him. He sees you as his property. Come to Brazil with a student visa, specifically Rio, where you can wear Daisy Dukes, a bikini top and flip-flops everywhere and nobody will bat an eye on you. You can get financial help provided by state universities. I wish I can finally be free of him. I really can't stay man like him under a roof, but thank you for letting me know, I appreciate it so much. Before the condemnation flows, what country are you in? Are there local dress standards? E.g., if you are in Iran, yeah, your dad should worry about you going outside in a t-shirt. And it's not just Muslim countries. There are other places like India or China that can cause legal or social problems if you don't dress like they want. I ask because dad doesn't seem to mind what you are wearing when not in the country. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.